All right, folks, let me welcome you to Greer City Council meeting. This meeting is called and convened this evening of January 23rd, 2018. Having called the meeting to order, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance followed by an invocation for our council. In Ms. Booker's absence, I will lead us in the invocation. If you would like to stand, please do so.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we are indeed grateful for the opportunities that you have presented us today, and I hope our efforts have been worthy of the calling that you've placed upon our lives. We thank you not only for this beautiful day, but all the blessings that you have provided on this city and this area as we look around the country where they are having extreme cold and flooding and heavy snows and all of the different events that are taking place. You've certainly spared us in that regard. Nevertheless, let us be mindful and empathetic for those that do not have adequate heat or housing or food or whatever it may be that is less than what we have received out of your abundance today. Let us be mindful of them and let us keep them in mind as we go about the business that you called us for. We thank you for the calling that you've placed upon our lives. We ask now that you'll lead, guide, and direct us through the rest of this evening. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I guess I also should have acknowledged those folks that have the flu. We've got a good crowd tonight, but I know that many industries, schools, and other organizations have seen dramatic increases in employees being out due to sickness and illness, and so we want to remember those folks as well too. Ms. Adams, anyone to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
With that, then we'll move to the minutes of the council meeting from January 9th, 2018, and I'll entertain a motion that they be received.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, you will find departmental reports, obviously, that are contained in your packet, and those are available for your review, and questions in that regard will be answered by department heads or the administrator. We also will have the audit presentation this evening by David Seifert, as well as a presentation by Ann Cunningham, our Director of Parks and Recreation, as she brings us her annual report, and then the administrator's report will follow that by Mr. Drigger. So the floor is yours, Mr. Seifert.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're pleased to bring to you the financial performance summary report for the period ended December 31st, 2017. Beginning with the general fund, we have revenues recorded of $8,166,000 with general fund expenditures of $9,880,000. Those expenditures for December are year-to-date 9% under budget. Excuse me. Referencing the dashboards, we have a combined positive variance of $3,886,000 and a carrying cash value at December 31st of $11,955,000. Moving to the hospitality fund, we have revenues recorded that are 3% over budget of $1,077,000. Expenditures year-to-date of $335,000, and a hospitality carrying cash balance of $1,923,000. And finally tonight, bringing the stormwater fund, we have revenue recorded of $131,000, expenditures of $74,000, and a carrying cash balance in the stormwater fund of $1,164,000. I'd be happy to take any questions we may have at this time.
Council. Hearing none. David, we appreciate it, and we'll see you again shortly as we review the 2016-2017 audit.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ms. Cunningham, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A handout has been provided to each of you that contains the detailed 2017 annual report for the Parks and Recreation Department. This document contains updated action improvement items that focus on the 4 components of the City of Greer's strategic plan, pages highlighting each of the 5 divisions in this department that provides employee information, participant numbers, projects, events, and highlights from 2017, as well as those planned for 2018. And at this time, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you through a PowerPoint presentation some of those highlights. Century Park renovations that featured a new press box, concession stand, and standalone bathrooms and picnic shelter were introduced to the community at opening day on April the 1st. Approximately 1,500 people and 42 teams attended the ceremony. Mayor Pro Tem Riley Bettis threw out the first pitch. The City of Greer is contracted with SGA Architecture for Phase 2 of the Center for the Arts renovation project. Community input sessions were held and staff continues to work with SGA on design and construction documents. For the development of the master plan for South Sugar Road Park, Alta Planning and Design was contracted and a steering committee was formed for the purpose to provide direction of the design and programming of this park. This is a long-term plan and one that we can use to guide us in the development of this park for future programming. The Parks and Recreation Department sign on Highway 101 at Stevens Field was altered to include the American Legion sign. Previously, there were 2 different signs within this small space, and by combining the 2 signs, it became a monument that includes landscaping, lighting, and an American flag. Wilson and Associates installed a subsurface drainage system on the top field at the South Sugar Road Park in July, and we added sod in August. Previously, there were sections of the field that were unplayable due to soggy field conditions from the lack of drainage. The fields at City Stadium and South Sugar Road Park were overseeded with ryegrass in the fall, and this should provide a protective layer that will save the Bermuda grass in its dormancy while soccer teams play on it during the winter, and this project was completed in-house by our staff. When the Cannon Center was renovated in 2012, the restrooms were not included in the scope of work. The restroom facilities were renovated and updated last February, and renovations included replacing the tile and countertops, installing new faucets and sinks, as well as mirrors in each restroom. Our conference room AV equipment at the Operations Center was upgraded from a TV to a projector with a 94-inch screen, wireless workstation, and ceiling-mounted speakers. This will greatly enhance our training opportunities. Excuse me. An automatic gate opener was installed at the side entrance of the Operations Center. This gate previously stayed open throughout the day and was not monitored. We now have easy, restricted access at all times of the day and mainly nighttime hours for staff, preferred vendors, and CPW. A badge swipe or numeric pin gives access without having to leave a vehicle. The addition of public art in 2017 included the installation of 8 smaller tube dudes throughout parks and the greater downtown area. Tube dude is geographically restricted to ensure uniqueness to Greer. An additional 8 statues were delivered in December, and they will be installed in parks and placed throughout the city in early 2018. Some of our new programs for the past year include our first Greater Greer Bridal Showcase at Greer City Hall that was hosted by the Events Division in February. Upstate brides were able to visit with local wedding vendors while the Events Division showcased both City Hall and the Cannon Center as prime wedding venues. The Greer Adult Baseball Wooden Bat League was facilitated at Stevens Field, and 4 teams competed in regular season and tournament from August through October. Ham radio classes are taught at Victor Gym by certified instructors and meet once a week free of charge. This hobby allows people to talk around the world without internet or cell phones. It's fun, social, educational, and can be a lifeline during times of need. In partnership with the Mary Black Foundation for the Healthy Community 50 grant, we participated in Walk with Your Local Elected Official. 50 counties across the country hosted quarterly walks for a healthier initiative. The city of Greer was one of 6 cities in Spartanburg County that participated. The second annual Hope Week was held in April, and the program produced 105 volunteers and over 380 hours of community service. Our projects included youth basketball camps at Victor Gym and the Needmore Recreation Center, mulching and planting at Greer City Park, Victor Gym, the Needmore Recreation Center, and Veterans Park. And the Bristol, Virginia Senior Show Choir performed at the Cannon Center. Approximately 300 people attended this very special show featuring songs from various decades. This year, we were the recipients of $19,500 in grants from organizations such as Greenville County Redevelopment Authority, South Carolina Ports Authority, and the Metropolitan Arts Council. $33,500 was acquired in monetary sponsorships, and approximately $16,000 was received from in-kind donations. Our staff works hard each year to find ways to enhance their programming through obtaining grant sponsorships and these in-kind donations. Planned projects for the upcoming year. Completion of Phase 2 construction for Center for the Arts in the surrounding park. We're working with Alta Planning and Design for the development of the Kids Planet Master Plan. Finalizing the installation of the pedestrian bridge at Century Park. Updating one of the playground structures at Wards Creek Park. Completing a master plan for Country Club Road Park, and this would be a long-term plan and one that we can use to guide us in the development of the park for future programming. Replacing and updating entrance signs at some of our facilities, and installing a radio frequency ID reader on the automatic gate and our 14-foot warehouse door at the Operations Center that will read a sticker on your vehicle as you approach for access. In conclusion, I'd like to show a video that highlights some of our events from this past year. We had so much fun putting this together. Actually, we contracted with 2 students from North Greenville University, and they spent, I can't tell you how many hours with us throughout this whole year. It's not everything, but it sure is a lot. It's easy for us to tell you, but it's great when we can show you. And last, I'm so proud of the work that all of our staff do. They just do a tremendous job. I'm really appreciative for the support and advocacy of our Recreation Association Board of Trustees and our ad hoc committee representatives. I'm also grateful for the continued support and partnership with the Greer Cultural Arts Council. And thank y'all for the opportunity. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Looks like an outstanding job.
Oh. Thanks.
Very good report, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. The other departments hate the sheet goes in January.
You do get to do a lot of the fun stuff.
We do. Well, we notice most of our monthly reports are not very exciting. They don't have as much statistical information and graphs and charts, so when we can actually show you what we do through video, we're pretty excited about that.
Ms. Cunningham, just off the top of your head, it may be more than you can keep track of, but how many different programming opportunities do we offer now in terms of particular, not times, but particular types of events? I mean, I saw pickleball, dancing, I saw football, basketball, baseball, it must be a huge number of programming opportunities.
If you look in our annual report, athletics, of course, everything is listed as to what we provide. Recreation division, which is on page 4, again, their programs that they have, I think they had 52 programs this year, over 6,700 participants. And again, we're always trying new things, and that's important because people come into this community and would like for us to offer programs, and we encourage people to let us know what those are. Cultural arts, they're always changing and upgrading and trying different things, and same thing with the events division. So kudos to all of them, but they're all in here. It's hundreds of programs that we provide when we're all combined together.
No, in years past, we've had a few ups and downs in terms of particular programs based on, sort of what's popular at the time in terms of traveling teams or particular types of sports or that sort of thing. Have we seen any trend in the last couple of years other than just upwards in terms of participants? Or?
Well, our youth basketball program is growing. Wrestling is growing. I think soccer is pretty consistent. It's staying popular. So is baseball. They're right there. They're our top two. But I think youth basketball and wrestling are our newer programs that are really starting to take off.
Others?
Appreciate everyone's hard work that they do, because they do. When we have events and things at the city, they're there and cleaning it up and really taking care of everything. So y'all did a fantastic job.
Our grounds division does a great job. I mean, they are there. They support all of us. So if we didn't have them, we couldn't do any of it. So we're a great team.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but when is the last slide going to come up in the next year or two that's going to be asking for that new park that y'all need?
New park where? Which area?
I mean, I know we need to think strategically and long term, and I know there are some needs, issues. Is that something we need to get back on our strategic planning initiative? I know we've talked about it a time or two.
I think maybe in your retreat might be a great time.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate all you do for us.
Thanks.
Council, we get a monthly report from Mr. Seifert in terms of where we stand from month to month in terms of financial activity, and there are typically very little questions. We take his word for it, but this is the one time he doesn't get to get out of it because we're going to take a look at the people that audit him. So we get a chance to see how accurate he and his staff have been, and considering we're well into 20, I think, plus years of awards for reporting, I have no doubt that we're going to be in good shape again this year. But the 2016-2017 is going to be presented by David Seifert.
Well, thank you, Mayor. As they were leaving, I'm thinking we need to keep their background music to keep this lively, moving to the accounting side. But I'm actually not presenting tonight. So to your point, the auditors are here with us tonight. We have Ken Meadows, who's a partner with Green Finney LLP, and Keith Campbell, who was their lead auditor with us. So I'm going to turn it over to them and let them present, and then we'll take any questions you may have at that time. Ken?
All right, I'm glad to be here tonight.
As David mentioned, I'm Ken Meadows with Green Finney. Want to thank Keith for being here as well. He's a senior manager with us as well. So anyway, before I get going, I think this is our first year of auditing the city of Greer. I think it went very well this year. There's a lot of stuff that we do, particularly for our first year audit, and I want to thank David and Susan and the rest of the staff for all the hard work that they've done, all the information they've pulled for us, all the questions that we've asked. We ask a lot of questions. We ask for a lot of information, particularly in the first year. They'll be glad to know that next year we don't do nearly as much because we've got a lot of background and all that, but that first year it's a all-consuming task, it seems like. So anyway, you've got a copy of the CAFR, the financial statements there in front of you. You've also got a copy of our management letter as well on that. So rather than go through the financial statements, what we typically do is prepare a PowerPoint presentation and go through that, which basically summarizes the financial statements. So I'll do that. I'll go through that now. If y'all have got questions as I go through it, feel free to stop me. You'll find my presentation is not nearly as entertaining as the recreation thing that you just heard of, unfortunately, but that's the nature of the beast. So, but feel free to ask any questions as I'm going through this. Also, when y'all review the financial statements, if y'all have got questions in the coming days, feel free to contact either me or Keith. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you've got. That goes throughout the year. We've come back in and start our audit, our interim procedures in the summer, late spring and the early summer. And then we'll come back in for final field work next fall. But if y'all have got questions that you would like for us to look at when we come in for our audit, feel free to let us know. We'll be glad to do that. I mean, ultimately, that's who we report to y'all, so we work for you. So anyway, we'll get going on the presentation. What I'll do first is kind of talk about the opinion. That's probably one of the first things you get to after the transmittal letter in there. But we'll talk about our opinion. We'll talk about the general fund, talk about some of the other major funds, talk about the government-wide statements, and then we'll hit on internal controls and a few other matters as well. So, like I said, if y'all got any questions, feel free to stop me. But one of the first things you get to when you flip through here is on the opinion. And if you read the opinion, it kind of breaks it down into what the city's responsibility or what they're responsible for and what we're responsible for as auditors. So first of all, I want to make sure that everyone's aware that the city is responsible for internal controls. Y'all are responsible for doing your risk assessments and deciding that y'all have got good internal controls in place. And that you're assessing the risk of fraud and the controls are adequate. So I'll go ahead and mention now, I'll mention it later, that I think y'all do have good internal controls for the city of your size. So also, you're responsible for the financial statements. These aren't our financial statements. These are the city's financial statements. So y'all are responsible for the underlying accounting records that underlie the financial statements, the accuracy of those, the completeness of those. Y'all are responsible for the disclosures that go in. Our responsibility is to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So the two key takeaways there are it's reasonable assurance, it's not absolute assurance, and that it's materially correct. So there's a concept of materiality there. We don't necessarily audit down to the very last dollar, even the last $100 or $1,000. There's a concept, there that we kind of cut off at a certain point. If we didn't, we would be out here even longer than we were this year. So, and it would cost a lot more too. So, so that's the concept. We've issued an unmodified opinion that, provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So that's the unmodified opinion. That's the best opinion you can get. That's the one that most people typically get. It's one that y'all probably gotten most years, previous years. The other thing I'll mention is a lot of people, when people hear an audit, a lot of times they think of a forensic audit. This is not a forensic audit. It's a financial statement audit. A forensic audit basically comes in and looks for fraud, looks at a lot of transactions in a lot of detail. That's not what a financial statement audit, the purpose of that is. So I just want to make sure, if it's a material fraud, yeah, that would be our responsibility to find that. But we don't just come in and ferret out every form of fraud that may be out there. So that basically covers the opinion. In looking at the general fund now, I'll talk about the general fund. You'll see that the fund balance increased about $3.8 million to $13.9 million for the year. So y'all had a healthy increase in the general fund balance. You'll see that part of that is non-spendable fund balance, about $122,000, and committed fund balance is about $175,000. Y'all set aside about $175,000 for future contingencies. And that leaves an unassigned fund balance of about $13.6 million. That compares to about $10 million in the prior year. So y'all had a nice increase in unassigned general fund balance. And just kind of put that in further reference as to how the fund balance, that's about 74% of actual expenditures and about 71% of budgeted expenditures. Kind of put that in further frame of reference, the GFOA, the Governmental Financial Officers Association, recommends a fund balance, a minimum fund balance of 16.7%, which is about 2 months worth of expenditures. So y'all were well above that. Y'all have actually got a fund balance policy that calls for y'all to have 35% of general fund operating revenues, a fund balance of that, and y'all are well above that. Y'all are about 57% on that. So overall, y'all have got a very healthy fund balance. It's grown nicely this year. Just talking out briefly why you want to have a healthy fund balance. Y'all are probably familiar with this, but just the way the fiscal calendar works compared to the property tax calendar and just the regular calendar, you'll see that when y'all cut off the fiscal year end at June 30th, y'all have already received the bulk of your property taxes and business licenses for the calendar year. So at June 30th, y'all need to have an adequate fund balance at June 30th to carry you through another 6 months or so before you get other property taxes and business license revenue to come in. So y'all want to have it for cash flow purposes. Also, just like you would have a savings account at home, you need to have a savings account here, basically, or money set aside for unplanned expenditures, emergencies, and stuff that may arise. You also get better interest rates on your debt. Y'all get just recently issued debt, and I think you've got very nice interest rates on that. Obviously, having a good fund balance, the healthier you are, the more people are willing to lend to you and lend at lower rates. So the other thing is, if you're setting aside funds, which I think y'all have done, for future planned expenditures. So that's another reason why you want to have a nice fund balance. And then just given the economy, I think over the years, if you look at the city of Greer, y'all dipped into fund balance, y'all built it up, and then when the economy downturned, y'all were able to dip into fund balance so you don't have to make drastic cuts immediately, and it kind of helps cushion the economic downturn. So it's nice when times are good like now to increase it. So that basically covers the fund balance. If you look at general fund revenues were increased this year. Nicely, they increased about $2.9 million. You'll see most of your revenues came from property taxes and then also business licenses and franchise fees and then building permits and other fees as well. So you had a $2.9 million increase there. Most of that was due to higher property taxes and then also business licenses and permits and fees. Comparing it to budget, y'all revenues were over budget by about $3.6 million. Once again, that was led by property taxes coming in higher than budgeted, franchise and licenses over budget, and then permits and fees being over budget as well. So from a revenue standpoint, y'all did well this year. Looking at expenditures were $18.3 million. Most of that you'll see is in public safety, $9.2 million as you would expect. The general government was about $4.7 million, and then also recreation takes a little bit more than $2 million of expenditures. So those are your major expenditures. If you compare expenditures to last year, they actually decreased about $0.6 million. Part of that is an accounting thing. Last year, the rent payments to the Greer Trust were shown as expenditures. This year we showed them as transfers out. So that reduced expenditures by about $1.6 million. So actual expenditures, if you looked at actuals and comparing apples to apples, they were up about $1 million compared to last year. And that was mainly due to increased operation cost and payroll cost with the public safety department. So looking at expenditures compared to budget, they were actually below budget by almost $800,000 below budget. And you'll see there, general government was $275,000 under, public safety was about $300,000 under budget, and then all other departments were about $216,000 under budget. So y'all showed some nice fiscal, conduct and everything that's remaining under budget and stuff like that. That's what we always like to see, y'all abiding by your budgets, coming in under budgets as auditors. So also, as it mentioned down there, you'll see on the slide, the treatment of the transfer out for the Greer payments to the Greer Trust that basically fund the debt service on the buildings. That was a transfer out this year as opposed to an expenditure this year. So that's noted down there at the bottom of that. So that's basically the general fund. I'll run through the other funds now, the other major funds. I won't hit all the other minor funds, but the major funds, the hospitality tax fund, that's got a fund balance of about $1.4 million at year end. And that basically restricted for hospitality-related purposes. You'll see you had revenues of $2.1 million and then expenditures and transfers out of about $1.9 million in that fund this year. And so you'll see the expenditures there. You spent money at various festivals on art and various contracts of about $170,000 and capital outlay of about $150,000, primarily at Century Park. And then you transferred over to the general fund about $1.6 million out of this fund to fund recreation activities being funded out of the general fund. So that's the hospitality tax fund. The real property fund had a fund balance of about $3.3 million. You'll see this is the fund that received the proceeds from the sale of the Allen Bennett Hospital. The proceeds this year were about $2.7 million that y'all received there. And then y'all also got a $300,000 receivable that will be y'all will receive in the coming years. So anyway, that's the bulk of the revenue in this fund this year. You'll see you had expenditures for community development of $1.1 million out of this fund. That was mostly at the Century Park press box and the concession stand and the picnic shelter project. That was the major expenditures out of this fund. Looking at the road paving fund, y'all had a fund balance of about $288,000 there. That fund is, set aside to fund road paving projects in the city. And then the stormwater fund had about $1.4 million in net position at year end, of which $1.2 million was unrestricted. And then y'all had revenues of about $787,000 and expenses of $264,000 in that fund. And those expenses were primarily meant for stormwater related projects and other operating expenses. That basically covers the funds. Now I'll talk a little bit about the governmental fund, the governmental-wide statements. If you look in the financial statements, the first couple financial statements you get to in here are what they call the government-wide statements. And that basically takes all the funds, combine them together, puts on the capital assets that the city owns and also the debt that the city owes, and puts them all in a set of financial statements and kind of presents the financial statements like the city was a business. It's using the accounting similar to what a business would use. And so if you looked at that, the balance sheet basically what would be similar to a balance sheet would show assets of about $69.7 million. Most of that you would expect would be capital assets, $37 million, and then the other big component would be cash and investments, or cash and cash equivalents of almost $26.6 million. So those would be the assets. If you look at the liabilities would be about $38 million. Most of that would be debt, which would be $16.5 million. So you have about $16.5 million worth of debt. And then you've got the pension liability, the $18.5 million. And hopefully y'all are familiar with that from last year when y'all probably adopted the accounting standard on pensions. That's basically the city's allocated share of the South Carolina retirement system deficit that it has. It's not technically or legally an obligation of the city. It doesn't really impact your fund financial statements at all, but for the GASB thinks that it belongs on the government-wide statement. So we record that liability there, even though technically it's not a liability of the city. Where you do see it is the rates for the pension have increased and will continue to increase, basically so that the state pension plan can fund this liability. So that's where you do see it is, and so, but for accounting purposes, you also reflect it on your government-wide statements. So that basically leaves a net position or equity, if this was a business, of about $31 million. Most of that would be your net investment in capital assets, $22 million. Then you'd also have restricted net position of $5.7 million and unrestricted amount of $3.3 million. So that's actually very good. If you look at most government-wide statements, because of the pension liability, a lot of cities, a lot of school districts, special purpose districts, they're all in a negative position. That unrestricted net position is a negative. So y'all were the exception, I would say, statewide and probably nationally, to have an actual positive unrestricted net position. So y'all are to be commended for that. Looking at revenues and expenses, if this was a business, y'all would have made money to the tune of about $7 million. Revenues would have been about $31 million, and expenses would have been about $24 million. So that's the government-wide statements. We'll just quickly hit capital assets. Capital assets, or your fixed assets, were about $37 million. That increased about $2.2 million over the past year. You'll have capital asset additions of $4.1 million. The Century Park project was probably the biggest project that y'all had, about $700,000. Y'all also accepted infrastructure from various developers, roads and primarily roads, sidewalks, for real estate developers that are developing subdivisions in the city. Y'all accepted about $2.3 million worth of roads and sidewalks this year and other infrastructure. You also bought some land for about $200,000, and then various other vehicle and equipment purchases and building improvements totaled about $1 million. Depreciation for the year was about $1.9 million. Looking at your long-term obligations, that's about, you had about $16.5 million. That's a decrease of about $1.7 million from the prior year. That was mainly due to principal payments of $2.7 million on your debt this year. And then you also did have a lease purchase that you entered into to purchase some equipment. And that lease added about $800,000 to your debt for the year. I mentioned there that your legal debt margin for the year is about $8.3 million. That's the amount of debt that you could issue without going to a referendum. And then next year, you've got debt service payments of about $3.1 million that would be due, including about $2.7 million worth of principal. Other things I'll mention, future significant accounting principles. You'll see there the GASB has issued another pronouncement similar to the pension pronouncement, but this time dealing with post-retirement benefits. And so y'all are required, that will require on the government-wide statement, recording an OPEB liability this coming year. So you'll see that. We'll discuss it more next year when we get to that. I'm not going to dwell a whole lot on that. So that basically covers a financial statement audit itself. The other thing as a financial statement thing, what we do, we come in and we look at your internal controls. And like I mentioned, the internal controls for the city here, we did a walkthrough of every major control area, your disbursements, your payroll, business license receipts, other revenue receipts, looking at your bank reconciliation process, the general ledger process. We looked at all of that. All of those looked good. We did walkthroughs on those things. We had maybe some minor comments on some of those, but nothing that would be a material weakness, no significant deficiencies, or even a written management letter comment that we think we should communicate to y'all that y'all should be aware of. So that should give you some comfort on that. We did have a material weakness, if you look at the very back of the financial statements, related to the sale of the Allen Bennett Memorial Hospital. And that's basically, it arises basically out of kind of a technical accounting thing on that when y'all received that property several years ago, y'all should have set it up on the government-wide statements as an asset held for sale. That wasn't done. David consulted with other accountants, including, a partner from our firm several years ago. They basically told him that it was his understanding that he didn't need to do that. Well, actually, it probably should have been done like that. So it's one-time anomaly that you don't really deal with in your day-to-day operations. I mean, how many times do you actually get a donation of, a significant hospital or other piece of property? So anyway, what we did was say, well, that should have been recorded on the government-wide statements. Because it's about $3 million, that's what we would consider material to the government-wide statement. So by default, under the accounting literature, it becomes a material weakness. So that's why it's classified basically here as a material weakness. In my mind, it's not that big of a deal. People hear material weakness in internal controls. Sometimes that's a very big deal. In this case, it's not a big deal. It deals with accounting technicalities, and it really doesn't impact your fund financial statements. It doesn't really impact your day-to-day operations. As it came to the actual recording of the cash and putting all that was dealt with correctly. So anyway, but I do mention it because it ultimately results in a material weakness that you'll see discussed in the back of the financial statements. So if you want more information on it, you can read more on that, and I'll be glad to answer any questions on it. But like I said, it's not that big of a deal from my perspective. So you also, sometimes you'll hear that we do a single audit. We didn't do a single audit out here because y'all didn't have enough federal dollars or grants that y'all received. Y'all had to receive $750,000 worth. Y'all didn't receive that. That's not that uncommon for you, a municipality not to have that at the site for the size of Greer. So we didn't do that. But like I did, the final takeaway is that your internal controls did look good, and we were pleased with the internal controls that you had. So just in summary, you got an unmodified opinion. That's the best opinion you can get. That's the one that most people get. And y'all are in strong financial position as of June 30th, 2017. And that's basically it. So if y'all got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Or like I said, as y'all go through, if you've got questions, feel free to ask away.
No fireworks. Council, Mr. Meadows is available for questions, and I'm sure Mr. Seifert will join him if necessary. But councils of questions of our audit team, our administrator, or department head?
Well, over the years, we've been through a lot. It's a cakewalk.
Well, that's good.
I'd like to thank Mr. Driggers and David. I noticed this is the first time we didn't have to do a tax anticipation note. Fourth or fifth? Oh, that's outstanding.
You've gotten used to us not doing it now.
That's awesome.
Others? We don't, I think it's a good point. We never want to get lax about these reports, and I was joking earlier with David about our sometimes seeming lack of interest. But I don't think it's ever lost on us what a good job you do as a staff in terms of monitoring these numbers and keeping up with what needs to be done and seeing the unqualified opinions and other things. I think there is some reassurance among this council that we're in good hands, and that's a great place to be. To Mr. Griffin's point, there are a few of us at this table and behind other tables in chairs that remember when we'd rather take a whooping than look at this report. So, we are glad to be where we are, but we never want to take that for granted. And I think that while we may have gotten used to it, it's important that our citizens and constituents know what a good job that we're doing financially as well. So we appreciate y'all's work. First year at that. We look forward to a couple more with you, and thank you for your work.
That's great.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir.
Like I said, if y'all got questions as the year progresses that you'd like for us to take a look at, feel free to let us know.
All righty, thank you. Mr. Diggers.
Thank you, sir. If I may as well be allowed to echo my thanks to our finance department, David, Susan, and the entire team in the finance department. They do an excellent job. They are very, very, very conscious of what needs to be done, and they excel at that every single day. So we're very fortunate to have the team that we do. Getting those types of reports gets department heads like Ms. Cunningham sitting there wondering exactly how quickly she can come to you and ask for a little bit of that. But it is my responsibility to remind you that we have a lot of things in the works right now. And so we've been planning for that for a number of years, and we've been preparing for that, and through your strategic planning process, we have gotten to this point. And we are looking forward to the many things that will happen in 2018, 2019. But Mr. Griffin, one of our objectives is to make sure no matter what we do is that we do our absolute best to stay away from those tax anticipation notes. We remember the days that those were a big, big piece of how we got through the year. A couple of things that I do want to share with you this evening, if I may please. One of those is that we are celebrating a milestone relative to our safety awareness program. One of the things that we do on a daily basis at all of our time clocks is we monitor every day that we celebrate not having a lost work time accident. And so if you stop by any of those monitors, you'll see that we're tabulating that every day. Our most recent goal that we were moving to achieve was to reach 400 days without a lost time accident. We are now at 443. Does that sound right? I think we're at 443 days now, and we are excited to celebrate with all of our team members, and we're going to be doing that this Friday. So we would like to invite you to join us as well. We're going to be at the Cannon Center at 11:30 this Friday. Have an opportunity for Moe's is going to come in and do a bar for us. That's a taco and burrito and that type of bar. They're going to be doing a bar for us. Make sure I clarify that. This Friday, but it's a wonderful opportunity for us to say thank you and job well done to our team members. It is a good milestone for us, and we look forward to that clock continuing to tick as we continue to move forward. But we wanted to celebrate with those folks, and we'd love for you to join us this week as well. Do want to remind you that we are making arrangements for our participation at our Greater Greer Chamber of Commerce's annual meeting. That'll be taking place on February the 15th. A couple of you have indicated to us that you do plan to attend. A couple of folks have let us know that your plans will not allow you to attend. But we do want to make sure that we have made arrangements for everyone who plans to join us. So if you could please talk with me, talk with Elizabeth. We'll make sure that we get your reservations taken care of for that event. Many of us are traveling next week to Columbia to participate with the Municipal Association's Hometown Legislative Action Day. We are in the season of our state legislature meeting again, and we monitor their activity, and we certainly communicate with them on our legislative agendas relative to the state, affecting municipalities, cities, and towns across the state, and certainly those things that affect us as well. This is an opportunity for us to meet with our colleagues, your colleagues from across the state. That's taking place next week. Many of you are joining us. We look forward to that. If you have any questions about that meeting, Elizabeth has information about your attendance plans on that. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page for that as well. As we prepare for our celebrations with the Municipal Association, you are aware that each year we do submit a nomination for the Municipal Association's Achievement Award program. We have an internal competition each year that we do among all of our respective departments. I'm glad to report to you this year that our Parks and Recreation Department has been selected this year, and we're honored to celebrate their recognition of our Rail Fest program. And so we will be submitting that to the state for an award under public safety is the category. So it's kind of interesting that we are submitting a public safety program under our Parks and Recreation Department. Pretty unique. And so we're very hopeful that we will score well in that. But congratulations to our Parks and Recreation Department. That is a wonderful event, and we're glad to celebrate that here in the community. Ann did mention during her report that we are almost completed under the installation of the pedestrian bridge out at Century Park, so that's been a major event for us, getting that in. If you had an opportunity to see that apparatus as it arrived into the community, it's like bringing in an oversized load. And so we had to do a lot of maneuvering to get that bridge into the community and to get it set up over there at the park. You'll notice if you've been down toward the lower part of the park at the pond, things look a little different. We're in the process of our annual cleaning of the pond. And so we always get a few questions about that each year. We wanted you to be aware there's nothing wrong. It's our annual maintenance. We'll drain the pond, we'll completely clean the pond, and then we'll refill the pond. That'll be taking place. Our Kids Planet Master Plan that Ms. Cunningham mentioned a bit during her report, do want to make sure you are aware that we are in the process of soliciting our steering committee for that master plan. If you have folks or if you would be interested in serving in that capacity as well, please see me, please see Ann. We want to make sure your involvement is there as we continue to move forward. As you are aware, we have a significant donor for that program, and we have extended an invitation to that donor to participate in this master plan study as well. So we're hopeful that we'll have that participation. I am participating on a number of matters in Columbia with our legislators as well. So as we do go down next week to look at Hometown Legislative Action Day, it's an opportunity for me to have conversation with you as well about our own legislative agendas here that affect us in the city of Greer. And so I'd like to continue those communications with you so that I am accurately communicating that to our state delegation as well. And last but not least, I do want to extend kudos and thanks to many of our employees that participated during the snow event last week. We continue to do really good work when we are affected by those types of events. Wanted particularly to highlight, we had a new piece of equipment that we were operating with this year. Kind of hard to get excited about a brine machine, but it worked the way it was supposed to work. Those things are, they're very dependent on weather conditions and temperature, the amount of moisture that's on the ground. But we put down about 2,000 gallons of brine, and it was very, very successful for us. Kept our roads from freezing, kept us from having to do major scraping on our roads, saved us an enormous amount of resources relative to equipment and personnel that were necessary. Once the snow fell, we were able to get those roads treated prior to that happening. All of our departments involved in that, police, fire, parks and recreation, public services, all of those folks out during this event to make sure that our community continued to be safe during that event. So we're very thankful for those team members that made that happen, but it's an expectation that our community has of us and one that we take very seriously. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to do a good job with that. That's the information that I needed to share with you this evening. I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you may have either at this time, and as always, you certainly can contact myself or any member of our team if you have questions afterwards. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. And if you would pass along to Mr. Burns in the Public Service Department, I did have a number of complaints from my neighbors that there was not one hilly street that wasn't completely cleared of all snow, and sledding was at a premium. So
They made their way here to the park, I believe.
okay, all right. Well, I told them we would offer other venues. With that, then, we want to move to old business. We've got a couple of items before us this evening of old business, the first of which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 44-2017. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of properties owned by South Carolina Ports Authority located at 606, 608, 612, 700, 706, 708, 710, 712 Moore Street Extension, 411 East Avenue, 956 and 1120 East Poinsett Street, 391, 367, 369, 363, 380 Dobson Shed Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of I-1 for said property. This comes as second reading. Any new or additional information? Ms. McCormick?
No, sir. Last night the Planning Commission did hear this and voted unanimously to accept this zoning as I-1.
I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Items or any questions, comments? Hearing none. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert.
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you. This is the second final reading of ordinance number 2-2018. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 18 of our business license, Article 2, licensing sections 18 through 32, 18 through 34, and 18 through 52. This is found in Appendix A, Appendix B, and Appendix C to add definitions, clarify the applicability of minimum and maximum tax, and to reflect changes in business license tax rates and the classification of various industry sectors. This does come as a second and final reading. Any updates or new information in that regard? Doesn't appear that there is any. I'll entertain a motion to receive. I have a motion and now a second. Floor is open for discussion or questions. Hearing none. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert.
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. And items of new business, the first is bid summary in regards to playground fall safety material. Mr. Watson is with us this evening to give us information in regards to playground fall safety material.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to present you the bid results for our playground fall safety material installation. As you can see, there was only one company that participated. That was Cason Companies Incorporated. Their bid is under our budgeted amount. This company's provided this service with us several years in the past, and we've had no problems. And if possible, we'd like to move forward with them. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and Travis Durham, our ground superintendent, is here as well.
Council questions in that regard? Any additional information needed regarding the bid or lack thereof? Excuse me, is this coming in for action? I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any additional questions? Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert.
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Item B is the lease agreement between the Greenville County EMS. We have a lease agreement between the City of Greer and the Greenville County Emergency Medical Services for the use of .27 acres located off Memorial Drive in Greer. Tax map number is included. As you will remember, this is the station that is on the back of the hospital property that we carved out during that sale. This comes as a matter of action regarding the lease. Mr. Driggers, you've got information in that regard?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. You'll notice in your package, again, this is the what we call the ambulance barn. This property was conveyed to us when we received the Allen Bennett Memorial Hospital campus. Part of our restriction with receiving that gift was that we would continue to make this property available for EMS operations. Our current lease has expired, and this is an extension of that current lease. It's not a money maker for us. You'll notice that we do it for the big sum of $1 a year. It is our recommendation to approve.
And that lease, let's see, I'm trying to get there, is for how many years?
5.
5 years. Entertain a motion to receive.
So motion?
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions in that regard? Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. We have the first and final reading of Resolution 1-2018. This is a resolution to adopt the Spartanburg County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Presentation will be made by our Fire Chief Dorian Flowers, who came excitedly to the podium there. So, welcome, sir.
Mayor, members of council. If you remember, not too long ago, we actually finished up our own hazard mitigation plan for the city. This is incorporating our hazard mitigation plan into that of Spartanburg County, and that is under the recommendation of both the state and the federal emergency management agency, which is where we're required to have that hazard mitigation plan. So we're just trying to incorporate into their plan. We'll do something very similar whenever it comes time for Greenville County to renew their plan as well. Once that's done, we will no longer have to maintain our own hazard mitigation plan. Both counties will take on that responsibility for the portions of the city that reside in those counties.
Thank you, sir. This is a resolution, only requires one reading. Do I hear a motion to receive?
So moved.
Second. And a second. Floor is open for any discussion. Questions of the chief? Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Thank you, sir. We have the first reading of Ordinance 3-2018. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Jones Avenue Partners, LLC, located at Jones Avenue by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of DRD for said property. Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Mayor Danner. The project name for this design review district is Magnolia Green, and they are proposing a 21-acre development of 72 townhomes and 48 single-family homes. Proposed building square footage totaling 72,000, and this is a continuation of the project development along Jones Avenue. The developer has 2 other projects currently underway. Directly adjacent is Jones Creek Gardens, and then straight above that is Mayfair Station. And that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or a representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? In your relationship, sir? Civil engineer. Civil engineer. Okay, the engineering folks. Let the record reflect that. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So motion.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion or questions.
Was there any reason for it being requested to be zoned DRD instead of residential or anything like that? Maybe you can sometimes get a little confused on that DRD and residential.
Yes, ma'am. In this instance, they chose DRD because they have a mixed housing style product.
Oh, okay.
They have single-family homes and townhomes,
okay.
And so because of that mixed style use, it's better to do it that way for density purposes than just going for a straight multifamily zoning.
Okay. So with all that construction going on, it looks like we're going to have a lot of sidewalks going down Jones Avenue.
We will. Yes, ma'am. The project directly adjacent, Jones Creek Gardens, actually is putting in an interesting multi-use style sidewalk with some back off-street sidewalks as well. So that'll be a neat project to see completed.
Yeah, very good.
Others? Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it. Council, I'd like to defer action on first reading of ordinance number 4-2018 until after executive session so that we can acquire additional information in regards to that particular project. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, identifying our need for that, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn to executive session to consider the economic development issue, ordinance 4-2018 concerning Berkshire Place.
Have a motion to hear a second.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion that we come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, in executive session, we have considered an economic development matter. We've taken no action in executive session, but the matter before us now comes for first reading. This is the first reading of ordinance number 4-2018. This will be an ordinance to allow the city administrator or mayor to execute the appropriate documents to disaffirm, waive, or relinquish any rights it may have in a subject property identified as Berkshire Place pursuant to a corrective deed and filed with the Greenville County ROD office and document evidencing the same. Do I hear a motion to receive?
So moved.
And a second? We have a motion and a second on the floor. This reading is in title only. We will have the attached ordinance for second reading in regards to that. Any additional information or questions regarding ordinance number 4-2018? Hearing none, Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we stand adjourned.